And although the Chicano movement made up a significant portion of this next protest, they were not the only ones that were affected by it, and we are not the only city to protest or to fall under the attack of the Immigration Reform Act of 2006, which is what I'm going to be talking about. Ooh, boy. The legislation that passed by the U.S. House changed illegal immigration from a misdemeanor offense to a felony charge. This would affect employers who hired illegal immigrants. It would require that churches check the legal status of parishioners before giving them aid. You better say sanctuary in English. It also ordered the construction of fences along a third of the U.S.-Mexican border. The law didn't just affect Mexicans and Mexican Americans, but immigrants of every race trying to make a life in this country. But the ordering of the U.S.-Mexican border is a particular sting. Like, say the same thing about Canada, and I'll say it's not racist. Nevertheless, the immigration population of Los Angeles was not having it. The marches started in Chicago on the 10th with between 250,000 to 500,000.
You mean Chicano?
Chicano, yeah. The city of Chicano in Illinois.
Chicano, Illinois.
They started on the 10th between 250 to 500,000 protesters hitting the streets. Then they moved to Phoenix by the 24th with about half those numbers, but just as much spirit. On the 25th, we got ours. The Saturday edition of La Opinion featured a lead editorial calling on its readers to come out for the march, so they did. More than 500,000 people, it's 500,000, marched in Los Angeles to show solidarity with those who came to this country for a better life. And I've seen the pictures, and it is insane. Like, you cannot see, like, pavement. It's just, like, buildings, people.
Which is how this city will be if we don't put an end to this immigration.
We don't want Bronzeville again. Many wore white as a sign of peace, which try explaining to a police force itching to clobber someone that they just want. I just want peace. I want peace.
It makes the blood show much easier.
We can mark how much damage we've done to them.
It really pops on the front page. Just like their blood vessels.
They marched with the flags of their countries of origin, which were predominantly Central and South American countries. Someone pointed out that a majority of the flags that they were carried were American flags, because that's what people wanted to be part of. They wanted to be a part of America. They marched through downtown on Spring, Main, and Broadway. There was a truck for a Fox News van parked outside of, I think, City Hall, and people were surrounding and booing it at some point, which is pretty funny. Cardinal Roger Mahony of Los Angeles, of the Roman Catholic Church, was also defiant towards the bill, since it would require that he turn people away from his church, and he wasn't about that. Attendance of the 2006 March surpassed the surpassed the number of people who protested against the Vietnam War and Proposition 187, which was a 1994 state initiative that wanted to deny public benefits to undocumented migrants, which never passed, thank God. These marches continued on through the country from Virginia to Tennessee to Ohio. President Bush then pushed for a guest worker program, which would be more lenient on the immigration bill and migrant workers, which many people were pleased about. But the problem came from people like citizens of America who supported this bill. Although there was a massive opposition to the crackdown on illegal immigrants, a Zogby poll done late in 2005 showed that 62% of Americans surveyed wanted more restrictive immigration policies. So now it was time to show the American public, who supported tighter immigration regulations, how hard it would be to live in this country without immigrants working all the jobs. Los Angeles got an even bigger march on May 1st, not May March, on what people refer to as the Day Without Immigrants. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
I think I remember that happening. I also remember a movie coming out, like A Day Without a Mexican.
That's a thing that happened too. This was another nationwide protest that saw 1.5 million people on the streets protesting.
When was this again?
May 1st, 2006.
Yeah, I think I remember being at CSUN, and it was like,
that's right.
Yeah. I sat firmly, and I've never sat tighter in my seat in my life.
What are they coming for? What do they want? And when do they want it?
I couldn't hear them.
In LA, the rallies were scheduled for 4 p.m., so school-age kids wouldn't miss classes. And for those who wanted to miss school to protest, you could do that too. In total, I think they said 72,000 middle and high school students, about 1 in every 4 students, were absent from school May 1st, 2006.
What was the other 1 in 4?
Dropout rates. Yeah. In 19.
Interesting. I think that's some nice poetry.
It is, isn't it? Traffic went down 90% in LA and Long Beach.
So that's who we have to blame.
Once again, we saw 500,000 protesters on the streets of LA. 200,000 marched to the City Hall in the morning. 400,000 marched along Wilshire Corridor by the evening. Others plan to attend
church. Stay away from the Century Plaza, trust me.
They will bottleneck you, and LBJ will come back from the grave.
I want dessert. I don't know what LBJ sounds like.
He's very southern.
I want dessert.
And I want dessert, and I want it now, but first I want to watch all those heads get burst in.
Burst them in.
Burst them in,
burst
boy.
Them in
burst them in deep.
Now, come on.
No neck like Barney Rubble. Others planned to attend church services or to join the protest during their lunch breaks. Some workers requested paid time off or shifted their regular work schedule just so they could take the time out of the day to be an activist. This is how important this was to people. Businesses all over the country were closed when people walked off the job. These were all peaceful protests. There's no riot gear. There was nobody getting bloody anywhere. The overall vibe was very positive, although a riot broke out in Vista, California, but that's too south for our concern. But I think we were the state with the most protests. Modesto, Santa Barbara, Orange County, San Francisco, like all up the state. The effects of the protests are still largely unknown. The bill had passed the previous December, so we wasn't about stopping it. It was just about letting people know that we didn't like it.
Bush eventually became not president.
Nobody is happier than me about that. I think what the bill had the most effect on was just increase in border patrol. I think that was the biggest thing from what I read. If there was a huge decrease in profits for companies that saw walkouts that day, they are not sharing that information. But a message was sent to the White House that all over the country, a large portion of the citizens and non-citizens are willing to step out into the streets to show support for people who are here for better opportunities. And this is something that we're still fighting for. Future president of this hellhole, Donald Trump, wants to be president
of starting all over again.
I'm ready to march
every
this
10
time.
years.
He wants the president of Mexico to pay to build a wall. I think the president of Mexico responded by calling him a chump. I don't know. Put me on the Mexican side if that's the case. Oaxaca Mictli sounds pretty cool.